Well, good afternoon, good morning, good day, wherever you happen to be calling in from. Once again, my name is David Dart. I am the checkpoint instructor, or a checkpoint instructor for Layer8 Training, and I've been doing some training. I've been training and consulting for going on 20 years now. It's my passion. I love to train. Today, we're going to look at some of the new features that you're going to see inside of a checkpoint environment. So we're looking at the R80.10 deployment of the checkpoint product. And as part of that, I'm going to focus in a couple of areas, and I've got an environment already set up and ready to go so that we can see some of the components that are within there. Now, granted, we have a short period of time to cover the material, so this is not going to be a deep dive into the checkpoint, but we'll try and get you to the point where you can ask some good questions at the end. If at the end of the day, or the end of the presentation, I should say, if you have questions, please feel free to send them and we will answer them. If we don't get time to answer them, I'll be more than happy to email you after the fact for the system. So we're going to look at basically 4 areas, and I've got a couple of areas that I'm going to look at in addition to this, and these are the checkpoint security gateways, security deployment features that are available to us when we deploy the environment. We're going to look at the consolidated console. This is the unified approach to checkpoints management of the environment, and this is going to include some of the new features. One, the SmartConsole, which has taken the place of, but not totally replaced, the Smart Dashboard from the R7730 and earlier. We'll look at the new multi-session access for configuration so that you can have multiple administrators on the system. We'll look at some of the legacy consoles that are still there. They're still used for a variety of purposes in the system. It all depends on how your particular environment has been configured. We'll look at the security rule base. There are some changes in the way the rule base is implemented with this particular environment. We now have what are called inline policies. We still have ordered policies, which we've always had, but they're a little more obvious now. We'll look at some threat prevention. We'll look at the acceleration for the gateways. We'll look at the big 3 when we're looking at configuring the environment. We'll look at Secure XL, Core XL, and then the Cluster XL. We'll look at some of the external intrusion protection options. I'll just mention these very quickly, show you where you configure them, and then we'll take questions on the system, depending on how we are on time. So the first thing we're going to look at are going to be the smart consoles. These are going to be the smart console itself, the legacy consoles, and then what are the shared sessions within the system that give us the opportunity to come in and share a configuration session among multiple administrators at any one given moment. So I'm going to bounce over to a live lab environment, so we're not looking at the same screen here. We've got the Smart Console, which consolidates multiple components into one console. Prior to the R80X environment, you had multiple consoles that were used for different functions. We had the Smart Dashboard for configuring your policies for certain components. We had the Smart View, Smart Event Viewer. We had the Smart Tracker. We had various consoles that we'd use, the Smart Monitor for that matter. Now we have a unified approach where we have a single console where you can come in and look at your deployment from multiple perspectives. Now, the legacy consoles I mentioned earlier are also available, but those are used for components that have not yet been consolidated into this component here. So if we're looking at an environment, and I've pulled up a live lab that I've got here built on my server, and we're looking at the deployment within our system, this looks a little bit different than what you're used to seeing in earlier versions. We've got the Smart Console, and whether it comes back up there, and And let's get back to the right guy here. So we've got the SmartConsole, and on the primary page, this is going to be the gateways and servers component that you'll see, and you can open this up using Control 1. Each one of these has a specific control function to open it up. You're going to see all of your deployments inside of the system. Now, this takes the place of the Smart View monitor. So when you're looking at the Smart Event Monitor on the system, you're going to see there's a Smart View monitor here. You're going to see the various gateways inside of the system that we can use to launch or view the components and how they're working. So you'll see the gateways I have, how they're functioning, the average CPU, the active virtual memory, etc. And if I select a particular one, you're going to see some options down here at the bottom. Well, this is still available to us because this particular console is still going to be used for viewing tunnels. So when you're looking at VPNs, you're going to need something to monitor those particular components. So this is still available for that specific functionality. But when we're dealing with the actual components, the gateways and the SMS servers within the system, SMS standing for the Security Management Server, this is not the preferred method of handling it. Instead, they recommend that you go to the SmartConsole. Now with the SmartConsole, you can select a particular gateway, and then at the bottom of the screen, you're going to see exactly what we saw on the previous one. You'll see the CPU usage at the top. You'll actually even see what updates are available. If I need to back up a server, I can right-click on the server, select an action, and I can do a backup or a restore on the system. I can actually launch the Gaia web user interface to get to the system, and I can run a license report, a whole host of options for what I can do on an individual machine. At the bottom, if you look at the server, I'll pull this up just a little bit, you're going to see that we've got a gateway 1, which is part of a cluster. It's telling me my license status is okay. If I need to look at more information, I can select the option, and it will show me everything that's currently working on my system. So my firewall, how's my firewall functioning, and I can expand out the information on the firewall. I can look at my network activity, log server connections. I can look at my cluster functionality. This is telling me that this is we're in a highly available deployment. This is the active up system, so this is the one that your traffic is flowing through. And I can get some information on the interfaces that are being used for the environment. So this is the preferred method. So I can evaluate the machines on the system based on this particular component. I also have a whole series of reports that I can look at or views. So from a single pane, I can look at the health status of my environment. So free memory, total memory. I can evaluate traffic that's flowing through my various gateways at any one given moment. Right now I don't have any traffic going through, so not a whole lot to see here. I can evaluate my access control through the system. So we're looking at, say, identity agents and browser-based authentication, etc. What's my licensing, threat prevention, my management? So what are the management servers or blades? And then what's my licensing? Has licensing been done? Now, they've not integrated yet the licensing functionality of this. So if you're going to be licensing a component on the system here, you don't have the ability to come in and license these. You can run a report, but we still need to use the Smart Update tool to do your licensing on the system. So which kind of gives you an out if you let your licensing expire. So we still have the legacy Smart Update component for licensing the Checkpoint product on the system, but now we have the single pane for monitoring the various components within the system. Now, as part of this, we still have the other components in the system that the Smart Dashboard had. For instance, we look at the policies. So this is where we're going to be, you would be evaluating your rule base within the system. Now, I happen to be running with an alpha standard rule base. These are the some default rules, some pre-configured rules within the system. These are your firewall rules within the environment, and there's been a change in the way this is processed too. So if you take the class, we'll dive into how the system actually evaluates the traffic and what criteria it uses to allow or disallow the connection. So I can define my policies right here on the machine. I've got my logs and monitors are also on this particular screen. So we've got one pane here that we can look at the traffic that's been allowed or disallowed coming into the environment on the system. So I've got some traffic going here for something coming through here. Let's see what this guy is. So I can look at the traffic that's been dropped. Firewall rule going to the gateway. So we've got some rules here that are cleaning up the traffic. I've got allowed traffic on the system. If I need to see specific traffic options or log information, I can filter this based on exactly what it is I'm looking for. So what traffic is allowed, I can also filter the traffic using a search query. So if I was looking for a specific source, I could choose to add a filter in here to choose a specific source. So if I was just looking at, say, the AGUI, I would add the AGUI into the system, click OK, and then it would just use that as the source for all of my traffic. So let's go ahead and clear that filter there. Yeah, we're good. So then we can clear the filter if we need to on the system, and it will just show everything within the environment. I've also got some additional options that I can look at. I've got a general overview. This is your smart event viewer. This is a new component where they've integrated everything into the environment here. So this is going to show us the various components that smart event are going to be reporting to the system. And if I'm looking at that smart event option, you'll see you'll see all the blades that we can come in and we can integrate with these. Put these on the favorites tab. So you'll see these options here. These are the reports that we've got. We can come in and choose to put these on the overview tab on the system. So I'm going to go ahead and put on a couple of things here. We'll go ahead and do a license inventory. I don't have that enabled. We'll do this guy here. And so I've got a couple of blades open on the system. And if I open up a new tab, you're going to see some of these blades will show up on the system. So we have different options for defining our tabs in the system. You'll also see some of the smart event options. So you'll see the tunnel user monitoring. This is going to take us over to the monitoring tab to view our tunnels within the system. We've got the smart view. This is going to take us to the smart view component. So this is the smart view component on the system. And so we'll click the tunnel and user monitoring, and this just opens up the Smart View monitor. So we still have the legacy consoles available to us for monitoring the system. For some components, these will be eventually should be integrated into the environment. We've also got, and this is a new feature on the system, we've got the ability now. We still have the ability to create multiple administrators, but now these administrators can be logged on simultaneously. So the administrators are going to have the ability to come in and log on, make configuration changes. And as an admin, you have some additional options. So for instance, I'm currently logged in as admin. You can see this in the lower right-hand corner. You'll see where it says admin. I'm logged in. I'm going to make a change to a policy. So my DMZ environment currently does not have HTTPS as a communication port, so I'm going to add in the HTTPS component. So I'll select HTTPS. This is just one way to add this. So I've made a change to the policy by adding HTTPS, and you'll notice that over on the left-hand side under the order for the policy, it currently has a pencil. If I log on as another user, they'll see something different. And in this case, I've already logged on. I'm logged on as CP admin, and if I go to my security policies here, you're going to see the same policy, but now the policy I did on the other system has a lock on it. And this is telling me that it is locked for editing by admin, and it is locked for deletion by admin. So another user is currently using. So I would not be able to make any changes to this. So if I try to add in, you won't even see the change on the system. So if I tried to add in a specific policy there, it's not going to let me do it. So if I drag and drop, notice it's not letting me do it. So I'll go ahead and make a change here. I'm going to remove FTP from this particular one. Notice it's got a pencil on this one. If I go back to the admin account, you'll see that this one's got a lock on it, but I've got some options here. Got another administrator in the system making changes, and these changes will not be unlocked until I publish them, until I save them to the database. So I'm going to publish my changes as the admin. The pencil should go away on the DMZ. If I go back to the other system, you'll notice that now DMZ is available. This lock will not be removed until the user actually publishes it or they discard the session. Now, as an administrator, I do have the option, however, of coming into my management settings, viewing the current sessions, and you'll see that I've got a current session on CP admin. You'll notice it says locks 1, there's 1 change. As an administrator, I have a couple of options. I can select the current account, right-click on it. I can publish their changes and disconnect, or I can discard their changes and disconnect, or I can just disconnect them, or I can take over it. So if I want to publish and disconnect them, I'll publish their changes, and then the user is going to be disconnected. So the user over here was published by the administrator and good to go, and they're now going to be logged out of the system. So I can take control, but I can't actually view those changes on the system until I've actually done something, until I go over to the system. So this is a new feature on the system, so that we can come in and we can do multiple sessions simultaneously for administration. So this gives us a few options inside of the system for the environment. Some of the other legacy consoles that we have available to us, we still have the Smart Dashboard. That is still available for certain things such as data loss prevention, the anti-spam and mail. Mobile access will be defined here. Quality of service policies will be defined here. Endpoint desktops will be defined. So you define your endpoints, and then any HTTPS inspection that you may be doing will be defined at this particular location on the system. And you're going to see that this one has an outbound certificate already created. So we still have the Smart Dashboard available to us. It's just not used as, the dashboard is not used for all of the components that the previous iterations of Checkpoint had us do. So this gives us some options. Now, and so we looked at the SmartConsole, we looked at some of the components that are within the SmartConsole. We've got the multi-session access that's available, and you'll see a lock and a pencil on these machines. You'll also see that we've got the legacy consoles. Once you start diving into your consoles and you look at your security policies, we do have a couple of additional components that you're going to see inside of the system. These are going to be your ordered policies, your inline policies, also known as sub-policies, and then we have our threat prevention policies on the system. They're going to be handled a little bit differently. When you're looking at the ordered policies, you're looking at, over on the left-hand side, you're going to see a series of policies that are controlling access within your system. So when you're looking at this, you're going to see a couple of policies here. You'll see security policies. These are going to be your gateway policies. You'll see some application policies. These could be URL and application filtering, remote access, etc. We've got some NAT policies, some desktop, and some QoS policies on the system. These are your ordered policies. So what will happen is the packet's going to hit the gateway. When the packet hits the gateway, it's going to make a series of decisions based on the layer within the access control section. So each of these layers, security application, NAT, desktop, QoS, will be evaluated as long as we don't receive a drop. So under normal circumstances, the packet will arrive at the gateway. So this is the way it's going to work. The packet arrives at the gateway. the first thing that will happen is these rules here are going to be evaluated. The first rule that matches will be applied. If the rule is an accept, we'll let it through. If it's drop, we're going to drop it. The first one that it matches, the action will take place. If that action is accept, it will then go down to the next layer. So that would be the application layer. So in this case, we have the security layer. As long as I have an accept, we'll then bump down to the application layer. Once all of these have been done, then it will bump down to the NAT layer, then the desktop layer, and so on and so on. It'll just keep going down the order. As long as they're all accept, traffic will be allowed. The minute the traffic, however, is dropped, we stop processing. So if at layer 1, the firewall layer, the system says accept, we'll then bump the evaluation through to the second layer, we'll then drop it. So this gives us the ability to layer our applications to give us a little more control over the traffic flowing through the gateway. We've also got what are called inline layers. Now these, as opposed to the earlier versions where you had a flat ordered layer within your rule base, where you had policy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now we can do a sub layer, and the system will hit the gateway. It'll start matching the packet against the network access, the firewall rules, until it finds an accept. If it finds a match and it's accept, it will then go down to the sub layers, and you'll see these are, we've got sub layer 2.1 and sub layer 2.2. If the system matches the first system, we're going to block them. We'll drop them we'll drop the connection. But if it doesn't, we'll then go through and we'll accept everything. This allows us to do things such as allow certain users to come in and access the internet, access Facebook, YouTube, your marketing team, Twitter, etc. So this gives us a little bit more granularity when it comes to matching the policies inside of the system. We've also got the threat prevention policies. Now these are going to be a little bit different. With the threat prevention policies, you're going to see anti-bot, antivirus, threat emulation, threat extraction on the system, and you're going to have specific policies and profiles that will be configured for these based on your needs. So we can do a basic profile which gives you some a level of protection, but we can also go down to a very strict level of protection on the system. Now, the difference on the threat prevention policies is that these are not ordered. So when you're looking at the evaluation on these, the threat prevention policies are not going to be ordered the way the access control layers are. With the access control, we go to security application net. We just chunk down the list until we're done processing. And as long as they're all accept, we're good to go. With threat prevention, they're all going to be applied. They're going to be applied simultaneously. So all of the policies for your various components, say for IPS and threat prevention, will be processed simultaneously, and then any conflicts or overlaps will be resolved based on 3 specific criteria on those rules on the systems. And we can always create exceptions on these guys as well for the environment. So this gives us some a way of controlling the traffic through our system using those particular policies and being very granular on how they work. We've also got, above and beyond that, the ability to optimize the traffic using the acceleration tools that are available to us with the Checkpoint products. We've got Core XL, Secure XL, and Cluster XL. Each one of them provides a specific functionality within the system to allow us to accelerate the traffic. Core XL is dealing with gateways and security management servers, for that matter, that have multiple cores present. So this is part of the big 3 XL optimization. So with Core XL, we're looking at a gateway that has multiple cores on the actual system. So in the case of my particular system, if I look at my gateway and I get into the gateway and I look at the system, it's going to tell me that I've got 2 cores available. So this particular machine has 2 cores that are going to be processing traffic on the system. So the system will allow me to balance the traffic across these. Now I'm going to go to the second gateway, and it should have the same number of cores on the system. So it should have 2. But if I go to the SMS, I believe the SMS server has 4 on the system. Now, in my particular environment, I only have 2 because I really don't need the processing on this for the multiple ones. So on this one, I've got 4. So I've got 4 of these CPUs in place. 3 of them are going to be used. 1 of them is going to be used for a very, very specific purpose. In this case, it's called the secure network distributor. So I've got my multiple systems here with multiple cores. And when we're looking at that, we're looking at multiple cores. Secure XL is the way that the system is going to examine the traffic, and it's going to work with the Core XL to accelerate your traffic. Cluster XL is where we're using load balancing and or high availability for optimization, highly available deployments. With the Core XL, and in this particular example, we have 8 cores or CPUs within the usually it's going to be a gateway. In this case, when I have 8 CPU cores, 2 of the cores are going to be allocated and designated as your secure network distributors. So they're going to be allocated, they're going to be configured to be the SNDs. All packets coming into the system, either coming in or leaving, will enter through the SNDs. The SNDs will work with the Secure XL feature to determine whether or not we need to actually evaluate the traffic, or can we just let it go right on through. If we let it go right on through, the traffic will come through, pass through the gateway without any processing at all. We'll accelerate this right through the firewall. If, however, it's a new packet or it's a packet that needs some additional evaluation, say IPS, the network interface, the traffic will come into the network interface and then be shunted over to one of the cores for processing. And the cores will be load balanced based on your specific criteria on your system. So you can choose exactly how you want the traffic to go. To be evaluated in the system. Now, in this case, we've got 6 cores that are handling the traffic on the system. So we've got 6 complete instances of the firewall. So it copies the firewall multiple times. Now, the SND and the cores work hand in hand with the Secure XL. This is a checkpoint technology that is going to accelerate the traffic if you have it turned on, which it's turned on by default. With this, the system is going to insert a software layer within the path of the traffic. So between the interface, the OSI network layer, the firewall kernel, the OSIP stack, we're going to insert a new layer. Whenever traffic hits the system, the acceleration device will evaluate it and determine, do we want to pass this right through the SNDs, or do we need to do a little bit more evaluation? So this helps to eliminate processing of packets that are repeats, for instance. So as an example, you have a user that is logged on to a website. Instead of the traffic, the outgoing and incoming traffic being evaluated every time it hits the firewall, the system is going to create a state table. So it'll create a state table on the system. So when the packet hits, the system will come over and it will evaluate the state table. If the connection exists there, it'll just pass it right on through. There's also components that are called templates that will match somewhat to the state table. So this helps to accelerate the traffic by not processing it at all. The third option we have for acceleration is the clustering option. And this is where we can take our components and we can define whether or not they are going to be working in a highly available pair, an HA pair for failover. So we could create two gateways. One is the active, one is the secondary system. If the active fails, the secondary will then take over. Or we could do high availability, in which we gather multiple gateways together to optimize traffic by load balancing across all of your gateways. And there's a couple of ways of doing that. We have what's called multicast load balancing, where all of the systems will receive all the traffic, but only one of them at any one given moment will take a specific packet. We've also got unicast load balancing that will have one particular gateway that is going to be configured as what's called the pivot. The pivot will make the load balancing decisions on behalf of all the other systems within the environment. So this gives us some additional options for creating that. We've also got some external protection as well. We've got the IPS, the antivirus, the antibot, the Geo Protection options inside of the system. And IPS is a component that's going to utilize what's called the Checkpoint Threat Cloud. The Checkpoint Threat Cloud is Checkpoint's cloud-based repository for signatures and URL reputations and IP address reputations on the system. And with the IPS system integrated with the appropriate contracts, traffic will be evaluated based on those signatures. So if a packet hits the firewall and the packet is accepted, the system will evaluate it, try to identify any signatures on the system that may indicate a virus or a malware, or is this a bot on the system, and allow or disallow that particular traffic. As part of the intrusion prevention system, you may have heard the Sandblast. That's a term that's used a lot now. We have what's called threat extraction and threat emulation. With threat emulation, when the gateway detects an attached document or file coming into the system, it can extract or remove that file from the traffic flow, put it into a sandboxed environment, and either sandbox it at the CPU level or the OS level, open the document, evaluate if there are any malicious changes that have been made to the system, and then make a determination as to whether or not we should pass that through to the internal system. So this gives us that option. We can also, as part of the threat emulation, we can use the threat extraction. With threat extraction, a file that has been identified as being malware or being infected with a virus or other components can be cleaned by the system extracting the document information and separating out the malicious components on the system, and then passing a copy of the original through to the other users. Then we've got the Geo Protection. The Geo Protection option is going to allow you to control or deny access in the system based on the geographic location of the incoming traffic. So are they coming from a IP address range that has been identified in a specific region of the world that is known for its hackers on the system? So we have the option of protecting our system based on Geo Protection. This does require, though, a couple of things. It requires a valid IPS contract and a license. You're also going to need to have a geolocation database that can be downloaded onto your gateway to get this guy to work on the system. So these are some of the newer features. One of the other features I'll mention very quickly that you may or may not have seen, when you're dealing with the Smart Update tool, we have the package management. This has been around for a while, where you can come in and you can upgrade a system based by distributing a package to the particular system. Well, we've also got that on the gateway itself. And this is where we look at the CPU component. So when you're looking at a particular gateway, let's see if I can get to my gateway here. Is it powered on? You may not be powered up yet. He's down. So if I go to my gateways, and I'll log into the gateway here, one of the options you have is to come into the system, and at the bottom of the screen, you're going to see a section called Upgrades. And you can come in and you can upgrade your systems right here. So on the B gateway, let's see if Chrome's going to let me get in today. So on the system, 1 second here. I think that's the IP. And he may be down. I had some problems with my labs a little bit earlier, so I broke it trying to get into the system here. Let me do something real quick. So the B gateway actually will allow me to do something here real quick. So let me do something here real quick. Let's see if this guy's going to work. See if he's up. Give him a second. And it looks like he's going to fail. Oh, it actually went. Cool. So let's go here. Try it again. See if this guy's going to let me in. Nope. Okay. Do this the hard way. And let's see if that's me in now. There we go. So when you're looking at, in this case, this is R7730. One of the new features you can use with that particular tool here is you can update your system right from within the system, and you can do an in-place upgrade on your gateways, and you'll see that when we go to the CPUs, you're going to see the options, and you'll see the packages that we have available. So for instance, I could upgrade my system from R7730 directly to R10 right here, and the system already has it. So all I would need to do would be right click and then upgrade the system. This would then bring it into the environment and we're good to go. So this is one of the new feature, or not new features, it's been around for a while, but this is where they're stressing that you want to do most of your upgrades within the system. So that pretty much concludes the presentation. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to send those to Rich, and I'll do my best to answer them in the next couple of minutes. Rich, off to you.
All right, David, thank you. Thank you very much. We don't have too many questions. We do have one inquiry regarding the training courses and certification. David, I can just kind of touch on that briefly. Okay. So as far as training offerings go, there are currently 2 versions of training. There is the R77 training path, and then there's the R80 training path. Both products offer a certification for administrators and engineers. So there is a 3-day admin training and also a 3-day engineer training. At Layer 8, we run those also as a 5-day bundle. So you can attend 5 days and receive all of the content in the admin course as well as the engineer course. We offer these classes, especially the R80 classes, because they're new, and it's there's more demand for R80 right now than R77. We offer that training at least a couple of times a month. You can find the schedule on our training catalog, again, at layer8training.com, or you can just send an email to info@layer8training.com and we can give you the information. We also have some really good promotions through the end of the year where we're discounting checkpoint training 20%, or if you pay list price, you get the equivalent in a gift card just in time for the holidays. So if you would like any more information on courses and promotions and things like that, again, please email info@layer8training.com or replace the info with Rich. That's me. And either way, those emails come directly to me.